Today's webinar is a follow-up or a second step of what we did last week. Last week was one of the two public school boards in Toronto. This week we'll be doing the Catholic District School Board. My name is Stefan. I'm the Youth and Access to Education Coordinator at FCJ Refugee Centre, and this presentation is supported by funding from Mitri Foundation. And I just also want to point out Catalina Tevez, Associate Director Communications and Access to Education, is supporting us today with the interpretation because our volunteer who was going to do the translation wasn't able to make it. But Catalina also coordinates all of our communications at FCJ Refugee Centre, and anything in terms of the youth or access to education programming that I don't have the answers for. You can definitely connect with Catalina and follow up there. Just as a rough overview, before we get into the presentation, we'll go over a land acknowledgement for where our office is located, an introduction to who FCJ Refugee Centre is for folks who might not know us, what precarious status and the implications that those bring in terms of education, the education system in Canada, and a quick overview of an important part of the Ontario Education Act, fee eligibility for students based on your status, and accessing education in that regard. We look at the school boards, and particularly in this webinar, the TCDSB and the registration process there. So the land where our office is located is on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13, signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, and the Williams Treaty, signed with multiple Mississaugas and Chippewa bands. And keeping this in mind and knowing that all of us as newcomers and working with newcomers and folks with precarious status in this land, we recognize that we are on land that is not originally ours, or we are not originally Indigenous to this land, even though we might be Indigenous to the lands that we're coming from originally. Standing in solidarity with the First Nations people, we don't celebrate on Canadian commemoration days like July 1st or September 30th. Instead, we acknowledge and stand in solidarity with the First Nations communities, recognizing that even some of the efforts that the government have committed to are not being upkept, like with the many residential schools and the unmarked graves that were found this past year. The number that the Truth and Reconciliation Commission has is 4,118 unmarked graves. The federal government at that point committed to searching the other residential school sites, but in the current federal budget, that information does not exist, so they're not keeping up their promise. And one of our initiatives in standing with solidarity is to make sure that we're bringing this up to the federal government and to our local politicians to make sure that they are putting some effort into changing this and keeping up their commitment. So keeping that in mind, FCJ Refugee Centre and our motto is shoulder to shoulder, side by side, walking with uprooted people. And we've been doing so for more than the past 30 years. We recently celebrated our 30 years of supporting uprooted people. We are a nonprofit organization that serves refugees and others at risk due to their immigration status. We welcome anyone asking for advice, counsel, or support regarding these issues, and we address systemic issues that newly arrived refugee claimants and persons with precarious status face in Canada, including lack of resources, marginalization, and discrimination. So our center is a very interconnected and interdependent body. We have many different teams that work independently and have many different programs and subdivisions within the programs, but also we work interdependently between the programs. So this just gives you an overview of the larger teams in our office. We have the anti-human trafficking team, primary clinic, popular education and access to education, which this webinar is under. advocacy, housing, refugee protection program, youth programs, housing, settlement programs, networking, and food security. Now, just moving forward and looking at what regularized versus precarious status is, we've covered these points in our webinar last week, so I'll keep it a little more brief this time so we can spend more time on the actual enrollment process, navigating the website for the TDSB, and any questions that you might have. And as we go along the webinar, feel free to put your questions in the chat. It can be in English or Spanish, or if it's another language and you are not accustomed to English or Spanish, I'll try my best to translate that and answer your questions as well. So what are examples of regularized status? Anyone who's a Canadian citizen has sort of the highest status that you could have in terms of your immigration in Canada, because it's generally very difficult to lose that status once you have it. And someone who loses that status would then become a stateless person. Then you have permanent residents who have secured a substantial regularized status, convention refugees and protected persons who are essentially approved refugee claimants. Then you have international students and visitors, and you'll see a sort of asterisk signs next to them because based on the immigration situation, policy changes, or the duration of this accessibility to stay in Canada, they could fall under regularized or precarious status situations. Now, moving to what precarious status looks like, means anyone who's a refugee claimant, so that's you made your refugee claim and you don't have a decision yet. A refused refugee claimant, someone who got a negative decision on their refugee claim, an international student or visitor, again on this side, and those caught in limbo due to immigration policy changes, victims and survivors of human trafficking, those involved in sponsorship breakdowns, and also anyone without official immigration status living in Canada. Moving towards some of the implications that these statuses will then carry forward, moving into the accessibility to services and other supports here in Canada, immigration policies are ever changing. So with each moving government and even within each government period, the policies are changing, the programs are changing, and then the ability to regularize your status under those programs becomes difficult because you're not able to tell that it's going to stay the same up until the time you fully regularize your status. Lack of access to public and social services like healthcare, education, and a stable and secure employment, a lack of financial stability, lack of recognition of academic or professional credentials from your country of origin, separation from family or personal networks by the act of having to leave your country and come to Canada, fear of contacting police or authorities in an emergency because of the fear of detention or deportation, living in fear with uncertainty about the future, and also manipulation and oppression from institutions and individuals in positions of power, either due to ignorance because they don't know what they're doing, or out of malice because they know your status and they know that you're sort of caught in a situation where you either do what they're telling you to do or you don't have other options, or you don't have many other options, which you might not have access to that information. Now, looking at the education system in Canada. So education is provincially administered, which means that across the entire country of Canada, there's no one particular system. It's based on which province you are. So British Columbia has their own education act and education system. Saskatchewan has the same. Manitoba has an individual one for themselves. Quebec has their own system, and Ontario has their own system alike. So the Ministry of Education is the ministry of the government of Ontario, responsible for government policy, funding, curriculum planning, and direction in all levels of public education, including elementary and secondary schools. When you go to the post-secondary level, there's a different ministry for that, but generally the Ministry of Education covers the elementary and secondary schools, which both the TDSB and the TCDSB fall under. Now, looking at the Education Act, this Education Act is only particular to Ontario. So if you move to a different province, you would have to review what their Education Act is and what their policies are in terms of accessing education. But in Ontario, under Section 49.1 of the Education Act, amended in 1993, it was amended to add this section to ensure that minor children are not denied an education because of their immigration status or the immigration status of their parents. And the section reads as follows, and you can take a picture of the screen just to keep this as a resource for yourself. You will also have access to the PowerPoint after this webinar. So a person who is otherwise entitled to be admitted to a school and who is less than 18 years of age shall not be refused admission because the person or the person's parent or guardian is unlawfully in Canada. I just want to explain this a little more in detail and talk about some of the terminologies that's used here. So a person who is otherwise entitled to be admitted to school means that just like people who have a Canadian citizenship status and who have all the other documents required to go and get enrolled in school, and who are under the years of 18 and less than 18 years of age. So anyone who's below 18 years, sometimes that means up until the age of 17. Sometimes with schools, they'll allow it till the 18 years of age. So people who meet both those requirements should not be refused admission to school solely based on either the student's immigration status or the immigration status of the parent. They use the word unlawfully to describe their immigration status in Canada. So just because that word is being used in the Education Act does not mean someone is in Canada and illegally, or that the person is illegal. No person is illegal by existing. Everyone is inherently a legal entity that is a human right, and that's their human right. It's just political discourse and these narratives that politicians use to make someone out to be an illegal entity, which is not a reality. So no one is illegal. It's just the language that is being used, and it propagates a division in society because of the language that they use. Anyone who enters Canada not through a port of entry, so that's either a designated land border or airport, or a seaport of a particular designated port of entry, they are entering Canada irregularly, not illegally. So now that we've understood those points, who is considered an international student or who is considered a domestic student in terms of fee payment within the Toronto School Board? So anyone who is a Canadian citizen, a permanent resident, a convention refugee, protected person are considered domestic students. The rest of the statuses, you'll see that asterisk again next to them because there are certain documents or certain requirements that they need to meet to be considered a domestic student in terms of fees. Refugee claimants who have either their white paper, the letter of acknowledgement of claim, or their brown paper, the refugee protection claimant document, are considered for domestic fees. Rejected refugee claimants, because they already would have their brown paper by the time they go for the eligibility interview, or they would have their letter of acknowledgement of claim, they're considered domestic students. Anyone who's non-status, if they are here in Canada for longer than 6 months and can prove their date of entry, they are considered for domestic fees. A minor child, so that's anyone under the age of 18, of an international student who meets the requirements of the Toronto District School Board in terms of what their program delivers. So their program that they're enrolled in must meet the requirements of the Toronto School Board, so the TDSB or TCDSB, to be considered for domestic fees. And also in the similar situation, a minor child of a work permit holder who has a valid work permit and open for the duration, the child is able to study for that duration that the parent holds that valid work permit. Now, coming to who is considered as an international student in terms of fees, Anyone who's a visitor or tourist and is on that active status and has been in Canada for less than 6 months, they are considered as international students. So if you don't want to pay the international student fees, you would have to wait to have been in Canada for more than 6 months, which would then essentially mean your status has lapsed and you're no longer a visitor or tourist because you've stayed for longer than 6 months. You've overstayed that duration that you're permitted at one stretch. You would be considered as an international student for fees. Or if you're a foreign national outside Canada, so say a minor who wants to come and attend a Toronto school, and you apply from outside Canada just for the purpose of coming and studying in Canada, you're considered an international student for fees. Now, continuing on that line, and what does access to elementary and secondary education look like in Canada at the general level? Or rather in Toronto, in Ontario in specific. So looking at the PowerPoint, you have to be careful with what words are being used on the slide because that determines certain eligibility. So this first point says school-age children who have arrived in Canada as visitors must wait 6 months before entering school. I see someone's mic is on, so I'm just going to request if you can mute yourself. Perfect. Thank you. So school-age children who have arrived in Canada as visitors must wait for 6 months before entering school. So you notice here that the keyword is arrived in Canada. So if you arrived in, say, British Columbia or Quebec or Yukon, if you arrived in a different province, that's okay. You start counting the 6 months from when you arrive in Canada. Now, to go to a school in Ontario or in Toronto, Ontario has to be a primary place of residence. So when you're providing them proof of documents, you'll have to give a proof of address to go to a Toronto school with a Toronto address. But if you come on a visitor or tourist status, to be able to go to school after that status has lapsed, the 6 months starts counting after you've entered Canada, not after you've entered the province of Ontario. Then we move forward, and just to point out, if you're watching and comparing to last week's webinar, the PowerPoint has the correct information, but I think I made an error in what I described in the webinar. So school-age children who have made a port of entry claim, so that's when you enter, before you are fully considered entered Canada and they have stamped your passport, if you make a claim before they do that, you're considered a port of entry refugee claimant, and you would generally get your letter of acknowledgement of claim, also generally called the white paper, at the port of entry when you make the claim. So if you're under that circumstance, you can enter school right away because you would have your letter of acknowledgement of claim, provided you meet the other requirements like having an address proof, etc. School-age children who have made an inland refugee claim, so that's after you enter Canada, if you make a refugee claim, you need to wait till you get your refugee documents to be able to enter school. Then after that, school-age children with parents who hold a valid study or work permit before the child is enrolled in school. So example, you came as a tourist and you applied for a study or work permit, but your children were already in school before that. This doesn't apply to them. But if the parents hold a valid study or work permit before the child is enrolled in school, they have the same fee exemption as domestic students. If you're in the situation where you apply for a study or work permit and get it after your child has been enrolled, you can either reach out to us or reach out to the school or the school board and have that discussion with them and talk about accessing the domestic fees. Now, they might make you wait till that school year or that period is over, but if you need support with that, you can always reach out to myself or to our center and we'll be able to support in that process. Now, all that said, these are some of the points to keep an eye out for. So school-age children who have arrived in Canada as visitors must wait 6 months before entering school. Students must prove a date of entry. Students can enter right away if one parent has been living in Canada for over 6 months. So just to go over those points a little more in detail, for proof of date of entry, you can either show stamp on your passport, a boarding pass, or even the digital ticket. So these are some things that are not often told to newcomers when we're entering Canada. Keep as many documents as possible. Sometimes even the sticker that they put on your luggage, that can also be helpful. But if you have one of the other documents, that is more than enough. If you entered, say in January, if you are the student and you entered in January, but one of your parents had entered 6 months before, you can apply under the non-status or other status category. You don't have to wait till the child has been here for 6 months. If one parent has been here for more than 6 months, you can apply under the non-status category or other status category. Parents must prove date of entry to Canada. The family must prove residence in Toronto. There are added complications if it's outside the GTA or outside the Toronto region, particularly extra documents, extra challenges seen in the Halton and Peel region. It's a little easier sometimes with the York region school boards. Then you have some of the regions like Durham, and what are the other closer ones? Yeah, Durham, and then you have the Simcoe Muskoka District School Board, which are generally closer to Toronto, but you have many different school boards across the province. So then there are also challenges with different visa types, so like with your work visa, student visa, especially if you are on a visitor status, and some schools look through the passport and there's a stamp, there'll be a letter V, which indicates that you are a visitor. So sometimes there are challenges with different visa types. It's a matter of advocacy and explaining to them that you meet the conditions. So if you have doubts of whether you meet the conditions or not, you can reach out to me and we can discuss further one-on-one on your particular case. Alternative custody arrangements from outside Canada are not respected sometimes. So depending on your situation, if it's just one parent here or if it's a separation or a divorce, sometimes you might need additional documentation to provide to the school. School-age children who have made an asylum claim in Canada can enter right away. So some of the delays caused in these situations are because of assessment tests, either your English or math assessment tests before you can enter school classes, schools refusing admission without additional documentation from the board, like an enrollment letter or authorization for the enrollment process to be completed. Lack of communication between boards, whether that be the TDSB or the TCDSB, and partner institutions like the schools, assessment centers, etc. Sometimes the schools are not trained properly, or the staff within the schools are not trained properly or sufficiently to support newcomer families. So in those situations, you can always reach out and we can clarify if what they're telling you is accurate or not. And if needed, we can connect with the school or connect with the board as well. Just to understand, sometimes when there's a language translation, the TDSB Toronto District School Board is called the public school, and the TCDSB Toronto Catholic District School Board is called the Catholic school. But in terms of logistics and understanding the terminologies, that's not true. Both of these schools are public school boards in Toronto. You have the private school system, which is different and generally has their own requirements, and their fees are generally much higher. Both of these schools are public schools, but sometimes colloquially the TDSB is called the public and the TCDSB is called the Catholic school. But to understand for your reference, both of them are public school boards. Now, up until this slide, we had covered all of this last week. I just went in a little brief detail, covering that quickly for all of us to understand that context moving into the TCDSB, especially for folks who had not attended both webinars. Understanding what the TCDSB is, the Toronto Catholic District School Board, it's slightly different to the TDSB, but essentially covers a similar curriculum. So on an educational level, whether your children go to the TDSB or TCDSB, they're getting a similar level of education. Now, how it differs is the Catholic school works under the Catholic church system, so a lot of their things are informed. Okay, I'll come to your question, Johan. I see it, Johan, I see it in the chat. But yeah, in terms of the difference, the Catholic school books, the Catholic school board works under the premise of the Catholic Church. So a lot of their systems and functioning are informed within those practices. Aside from that, there's not much difference. In terms of the registration process, the TCDSB has two separate websites depending on the age. So newcomer students will generally be supported directly at the home school at the elementary school level from age 4, so that's junior kindergarten, to age 13, which is till grade 8. So just before you go to high school. So generally from those levels, they're supported. You can go directly to the home school. I'll show you how to find your home school and how to do that. Or you can apply online, and then once that application is sent to the school, they will follow up with you if there's additional documentation or process is required. That will be followed up, and then you can commence classes. Now, newcomer students at the secondary school level, so that's high school, aged 14 to 20, they will have to generally go to an assessment at the orientation center. And that assessment is for English language proficiency and mathematic knowledge. So this test is done despite of the grade that the student has completed in their home country or based on their age. Despite of that, they will need the assessment to place you in the grade that matches your knowledge level in the Ontario education system, so that you, by the time you complete high school, you've completed all the required credits needed to be able to access post-secondary education. So that's the reason that there's this extra step. It's not necessarily a barrier, but sometimes you might not go into the grade that matches your age, so that can be a little frustrating. So once in a couple slides, I'll show you how to go through that process and how to actually apply online. Once you complete that process, as soon as you fill out the form for the secondary level, you can reach out to the orientation center to book an appointment. You don't have to wait for them to reach out to you. You can reach out to them using this email, orientation.center@tcdsb.org. Or you can call their phone number 416-393-5500 to book an appointment for your assessment test. And then here it reads that we provide services to families who have students between the age of 14 to 20 who wish to attend a TCDSB secondary school and are new to Canada, have been away from Canada for more than 1 year, or have relocated from Quebec, because the education systems are different. Now moving forward into how to find your school. So like I mentioned, the TCDSB has a two-step process. One is for elementary school age students and the others for the secondary school students. So at the elementary school level, you're able to locate your exact home school. It'll give you options for French immersion and also technical schools if available. So how do you go about doing that? On the screen, you'll see what the page looks like. But if you click on the link attached here, the blue link, I'm just going to share my entire screen while I move to that page so you can see what it looks like. Just give me a second. Okay, perfect. Here we go. So if you click on that link, it takes you to a page that says Elementary School Locator. And if you come, just a second, bring this out of the way. Yeah, if you come down in this search bar, different from the TDSB where you just type out the name of your street, here you can type out your full address and it'll give you the school closest to you. So I'm going to use the address of our office, 208 Oakwood Avenue, York. So I click on that, it gives me the schools that are close to me. So this black location point is the searched address. And then if I select a school, it'll turn yellow, and red are the other schools that are not selected. So if you look on the left, it'll tell you a regular track. That's generally the school that most parents or students apply into. So the regular track is your home school that doesn't have a French component. And for us, that is Saint Clair. So Saint Clair is now selected. It's the one in yellow. If I want French immersion, here there are additional requirements. You'll notice that French immersion is further divided. So junior kindergarten to grade 5 is St. Alphonsus, and grade 6 to grade 8 is Holy Rosary. Now, if in some cases you have extended French immersion, they'll be listed before, or if there are technical schools, it'll be listed below. And here, St. Clair again is one of those options. So you can discuss with the school, see what works best for your child and your family, and you can choose the options accordingly. Now you'll notice different to the TDSB Find My School Locator. On the Locator website itself, you don't have to click through to go to the school's website. You can get the school's address and phone number directly on the Locator website. And then you can call the school, or you can visit the address, take the required documents, and go to complete the enrollment process. Okay, I see a couple of questions in the chat. Just give me a second. I'll cover how to find your secondary school, and then we'll come to the questions. Okay, now coming back to the presentation. So that's how to find your local school at the elementary level. Now, at the secondary level, you can't particularly find your school because, like I mentioned, you have to do the orientation center assessment test. And based on that, they'll tell you which grade. And also at that same time, they'll tell you which school that you can be allocated to, because as you see on this map, there are far lesser secondary schools. So based on the availability at the school closest to you, they'll assign a school. That said, you can still use this resource to see what are the schools in your neighborhood and see what type of learning is there. So you have the ones in maroon, brown, reddish color that are the secondary schools, and the green ones that are alternative learning. And if you click the link attached on the slide, it'll take you to the secondary school website Locator. So you'll be able to look at the potential schools available to you. Just give me a second. I'm switching between tabs. Do I? Yeah, there we go. So in this case, I can do the same thing, look up an address, 208 Oakwood Avenue, click on it, and it pops up here. So this red location is Oakwood Avenue. Then I go on this plus sign and zoom in. I move towards my location, and okay, now I zoom out a little bit. So you'll see the ones that are close by. The closest one seems to be Loreto College School. Then you have St. Oscar Romero Catholic. You have Marshall McLuhan Catholic School. And you have St. Mary's School and other schools in the area. Now, even though Loreto College might be the closest to my location, after I complete the assessment test, they will tell me, one, what grade I'll be studying in, and then you can check here. So here, the grades offered are grade 9 to 12. And then based on if that school has availability in that school year to take on new students, they'll let me know if that's a school that I can apply to. Then once the assessment is done, the document will be your assessment, and a report will be forwarded to the school that is closest to you and that has availability to accept new students. The school will reach out to you, tell you what documents to bring. and then the enrollment process will proceed and you can start classes. So that's the process for finding the TCDSB school at the secondary level. But just bear in mind that it could be a little longer process. Now, coming back to the slides and looking at where can you register for elementary school. Like I previously mentioned, or actually let's stop to look at the questions in the chat. Okay. So sorry about that, Carol. Yeah. Okay. Just to cover the immediate question. So, for the elementary level, that is not the place to for either website. It's not the place to register. It's just the place to find the schools. For the elementary website, it's the one to find your home school and the other options. But for the secondary school, it's only to see the schools in your area. The actual school that your child or the student will be going to will be allocated after completing the assessment test. Okay, now coming back to the question. So one question in the chat is, I have a question. Can I enroll in any high school if I'm 17? Technically, yes, you should be able to enroll either at the TDSB or TCDSB. Now, because you're 17, in the TDSB, they might suggest going to the advanced programming that I mentioned last week, which is one of the secondary school options. It's after you've surpassed high school age and you still need to complete the high school diploma and get your OSSD and get the credits required for your OSSD. So in the TDSB, that's the process. In the TCDSB, you can apply, you can do the assessment through the orientation center and then get enrolled in one of the schools. But that said, once you complete grade 10, you might not have much further to go if the school doesn't permit you to take those extra credits through one of the process. So it depends on the school and it depends on your situation and what the school is willing to accommodate. Now the next question, una pregunta, nosotros los papas tenemos 8 meses no católicos. I would need two things to answer the question correctly. If we've understood the question correctly, that neither of the parents are Catholic and you've been living in Canada for 8 months, if it's elementary school level, so that is age 4 to 13, and neither of the parents are Catholic, and if the child is also not baptized, and here's the key point, it doesn't matter if you're Catholic in practice or not, you need to have a baptism certificate in a Catholic church. So if the parents don't have that and if the child doesn't have that and you're at elementary school age level, you cannot go to a Toronto Catholic district school. But if you're in secondary school level, so that's grade 9 to 12, it doesn't matter if you have the baptism certificate or not. You can apply to a Catholic school and they'll accept you because that's not a document requirement at the high school level. Now to answer the second part of the question, as long as you've been in Canada for more than 6 months or you have a different immigration status like a refugee claimant or approved refugee work permit holder or study permit holder, as long as you've been in Canada for more than 6 months, which would essentially mean your status has lapsed, yes, you can go to a public school in Toronto. But like if looking at the full question, if you don't have the baptism certificate, no, you cannot go at the elementary school level. Okay, then the next question, y si el papá ya tiene un año aquí en Canadá, pero mi niña y yo apenas tenemos 2 meses la puedo inscribir en la escuela. Okay, so to translate that into English, the dad is been in Canada for 1 year, but the kid and up 10 years. I'm not sure if that's the spouse or the siblings of the child have been in Canada only for 2 months. Is it possible to enroll them in school? So if they've not made a refugee claim or they don't have any other particular immigration status, you won't enroll them under that, but you would use the dad's immigration status to enroll them because the dad has been here for more than 6 months, which would essentially mean that he's lapsed status. So yes, if one parent has been here for more than 6 months, the child can go to school under the parent's lapsed immigration status. Okay, the next question. Solo es entrar y registrándose en la página. Okay, this I will need to translate because I'm not sure if I understand it correctly. So let's here. It is only entering and registering on the page. Okay, so it depends on which level of school you're going to. If it's elementary, and I will go into that after this. If it's elementary, you have either the option of in-person or online. And if it's secondary, yes, it's only online. Okay, and then the last question in the chat for now. Tengo un hijo de 17 años y en la preparatoria quedó de ver materias ni yo me lo pueden aceptar. Okay, let me just translate this to make sure. So the question says, I have a 17-year-old child. In high school, I have 2 subjects. My son can. Okay, I don't think it translated correctly, but if it means that the child has completed credits in their country of origin, they would need to validate those credentials. So you would need to give them a translated document in English. Translations can be expensive. So if that's the case, you can reach out to us. We'll provide you a list of other service providers. We unfortunately don't translate that in our center, but we'll provide you resources where you can get that translation done for either a minimal amount or for free. But yes, your son should be able to go to school. And just to iterate again, because the age is 17 and that's on the verge of the end of high school age, there may be alternate options based on your status. Okay, coming back to the PowerPoint. So where can I register for elementary school? You can register your child at the home school. So by using the Find Your School Locator, you can go physically to the address or call the number and see what the options are. Or you can register online by clicking on this link here. It'll take you to the TCDSB SOAR, which is their application portal website. And I'm going to show you what that looks like for the elementary level. Okay. Again. So this is what the website looks like at the elementary level. Different to the TDSB website, they already have languages embedded here on the top of the screen. So if I want to say, change the language to Spanish, I just click on Español, and then the whole page gets translated. Now, if it's a new application, if it's the first time, you would click on the left side. So if you've never made an account with a TCDSB, you would click on the left. But if you've already made an account for elementary school registrations, you would click on the right side and you can enter the account. Now, to show you how to do that, let me click on the left. And then this box comes up. Important, before you proceed, you have begun the application process. Before you proceed, please write down the file number and application, date and time in case you experience problems completing your application online. For schools with limited capacity, the application date and time is one consideration used in prioritizing applications. So you can make a note of this when you're going in case there's a high volume of applications. So you have the time you applied. So if there's high applications, your case is prioritized based on your file number and the time that you logged in. Okay, I come to that other question that is in the chat in a little while. Okay, so you can print the screen or you can take a photograph if you want to keep that notice. In my case, I'm just showing you how to do the process, so I'm not going to save that. So I click on continue. And then it takes me in. I have to create an account because I've not used the portal before. So I create an account, and this is the information of the parent. So title, say it is, say Mr. Legal last name. And on these pages, generally they'll ask for your last name first. So make sure that you're filling the correct information in the correct field. Otherwise, when it gets printed and it's in the student record, the information will be wrong and it might pose problems moving forward. So you just fill that out, name, email address. I'm just going to copy the email address that I used last time. So here we have the email address. And then it asks you to re-enter the email address. And this email address it'll be the way that they identify that you already have an account. And also it is your username every time you log into the portal. Then you create a password. And then you confirm the password, you retype it. Then you put your phone number. Let's say I'll stop the share for a second. I'll put in phone number. So that's not in the recording. And then you have a default language and you add the verification code at the bottom of the page. Then you have to tick the box that says terms and conditions, and then you create the account. But now you are officially created the account and you've logged in. So you've been assigned a date timestamp. It will be used to maintain your priority position and the position of your application. Having obtained your date timestamp, if you are logged out at a later time, you can log in and access all the information. Now, here it's just directing you on how to access the application and what are the steps. So you can now, I'm going to English, so continue to the student information. So here you fill in the details of the student, the last name, first name, middle name, and here just so you are aware, so last name is your apellidos. I've noticed that in birth certificates from Mexico, your surname is split on two separate areas. So when you go to the school and provide the document, just make sure that they're filling it correctly, because sometimes they tend to put your first surname in the middle name spot. So just make sure they fill it in the correct spaces. And then your first name as it appears on the passport or identity document of the student. You fill in the other bio details, so like the age, gender, what name they prefer, country the student was born. Now here you will notice, so say I put Mexico, let's use that as an example here. Okay, then primary language spoken at home. Say if it's not English, say it's Spanish. Okay, then if the school has gone, if your child or the student has gone to a school in Ontario before, they'll have an Ontario education number. You can fill it in this spot here. If they haven't gone to one, then they won't have that number and you can avoid the step. You would fill out address, the unit type, and those details for the student. Okay. Needs me to fill in the surname to be able to go ahead. Let me. It's not letting me move forward. Let me just put 2019. Let's put 2030. And today's date, 26th Jan. So the child is 10 years old. Yes. Continue. Code. Okay, I will have to stop the share again to type out phone number. Just give me a second. It allowed me to proceed to the next step. Okay, let's come back here. So now student application forms that are filled in September will be available on Wednesday of January 25th. We've since passed that date. So you choose proposed date to attend school. So which month you want the child to start, either from Jan through September, you can choose whichever time. I'm going to say January. Now, because of the age, grade 4, but if you prefer the child to start at an earlier grade or upper grade, that's up to the child and parent to decide. But appropriate for the age 10 is 6 is grade 1. So 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Because of the language level and the time of year they're starting, it's not September, it's in January, they're putting them in grade 4. But if you start in September, it would be grade 5 based on the age. Now it's just talking about the school breaks, PA days, other information for the parent to be aware of, whether or not they're interested in after school programs. Does the student have siblings under the age of 4? Based on the situation, you would fill out that. Identify the school program you would like to apply to: community school, regional, French immersion, or extended French, regional, Eastern, right? Depending on what your preference is. Community school is what I chose. Apply to the community school, St. Clair Catholic School. We click on yes. It gives you the address, details, the principal, and you can go to the school website. Any other siblings at the school is no. Out of boundary request. Would you like to move to a school that's not your home school? You can decide and click on yes or no. And then finally move to the next section. And here you'll notice, has the child been baptized Catholic? And that includes all churches in communion with the Holy See. Now, if I click on no, they'll ask you further, has Stefan registered or completed rite of Christian initiation of children? Again, no. Has the parent or guardian been baptized? If I click again, no. It asks the same step for the parent. And then here you're at a roadblock because the student doesn't meet the requirements of the school and neither does the parent. But if I change this to yes, either one of the parent and that parent who's been baptized lives in the city of Toronto, the child will be able to go. If at any other previous point, I change it to yes, again, the questionnaire will be edited Again, it asks if the parent or student is in Toronto. Yes. And as they have the baptismal certificate. And here, notice you'll need to provide that original document to the school when the enrollment is going on. If I just change it and the child already has that certificate, not needed for the parent, you just put the date, which parish. So it has all the options of all the different ones that you can get it from, and then the city or country that they were baptized. So to make it easier to go to the next page, I'm just going to change this to no. And so now we're going to change this to no and add the parent as yes. Perfect. So then you put the contact information for the parents. You're able to add up to 4 parents or guardians or emergency contacts. Here, if it's just one parent or both parents are here, we generally suggest to keep this to the parents so that the access to the child is just one of the 2 parents. But you're free to add as much as you want. Generally, they're at the same address as the child. You have the phone number and the email address for the parent. Let me move forward. Okay, I will come back and add that. Let me see if it allows me to go forward. Okay, so I can skip on the left-hand side. If, say, now I don't have the contact information, I want to skip forward to a different step. I can click on the topical area and fill it out. So medical information, special needs. So medical information, generally any medical conditions. Special needs is additional supports that the student would need. Arrival in Canada. This is an important area. So if you're a refugee claimant, you click here, and then you would provide the documents required. Or if you're non-status, you would click here, other circumstance. And either way, you would indicate the date you entered in Canada. Let's say I can put last Thursday, for example. Identify current immigration status, again, refugee claimant or other circumstance in most situations, whatever is applicable to your individual case. Then you finally move on to the next one, previous school information in Ontario. If they've not studied in Ontario, you click on no. Was it a Canadian province or territory? Again, no. Then you provide the information of the school outside of Canada. If I click on yes, then it would provide us for the information of the school inside Canada. And then confirm, we can skip the section and go to the privacy statement. So this is just a privacy statement, understanding that you're giving this information to the school and that the information will be used in accordance and regulation of the Education Act and other guidelines by the Ministry of Education. There's a quick survey for the parents. Generally, you can click whatever is applicable to you. I'm just going to click the first option for all of these so I can move through the process and show you the options. Here you can put comments if you want to. If not, you can. So now, because it's almost at the end of the process, the following information has been missing or incomplete, so medical information, etc. So it's not allowing me to proceed to the final step, which is meeting with the school and the original documents. So I cannot go to the meeting with the school. I'll see if it will allow me to show you what the documents are. Yeah, it's allowing me to go there. So you need to provide birth certificate for the student, baptismal certificate of either the parent, guardian, or the student. These wordings will change based on what you select within the application. The parent's passport, proof of residence, so it can be a rental agreement or other documents. I'll go in detail about that. And then a second proof of residence. So you choose the file from your system, you upload it, and then it's submitted. The school can open it and view the document. And then once you actually fill out all the information, you'll be taken to a final page where it asks you to submit the application. Once you click on submit, it's sent to the school. You cannot generally go in and update most of the information once it's submitted, but you'll have access to be able to upload the documents or bring the documents to the school once it's completed. So that's the process for the elementary school. And if you have any particular questions, we can go over that. If not, I'm just going to show you how to do the secondary school registration process. So let's come back to the PowerPoint briefly. So the secondary school registration has a separate website. It's also under the TDSB SOAR application portal, but it's a separate one for secondary school. So you have to complete the online application and do an assessment test at the orientation center before the student or your child can go to school. You can create an account and register online by either clicking this link in the PowerPoint here, or you can type out TDSB SOAR secondary school. Now I'm going to come to that website and show you what it looks like. So if it's your first time, on the left side, you click create your SOAR account. If it's a returning time, you would go to the right side, type out your email address, which is your username, and then your password. So this is the information again of the parent. So you'll notice here, the first name is being asked first, not the last name, and then your last name, you put it there, title, whatever is required. Again, I'm just going to quickly stop share screen. So you would enter an email, password, and your phone number, and then create the account. I'm quickly going to do that off screen. Okay, and while you're registering, it will say email address is not on file. Does your child attend a TCDSB elementary school? If you click on no, then it'll allow you to proceed. If you click on yes, it'll ask you to review the email you entered. And if your email address is correct, before proceeding with the application, please contact the elementary school to have your contact information updated. And to locate your pre-built application, they would require your email address to match your contact information on the student information system. And as always, if there's any information that needs to be edited or updated, you can do so at the parent profile or account profile option once you've entered. Okay. So now I'm going to come back and share the screen. Okay, so unlike the TCDSB SOAR application for elementary school, you have to activate the account for your secondary school enrollment. So I'm going to go to the email inbox and here, so student registration, term, current application number, the time it was started. And, oh no, this is, let me reload. Yeah, so this one went to the spam. Let me bring it back to inbox. So here. And at this link, you click on this here to go and activate the account. The account is activated now. I return to the login. I put the enrollment, the email. Exactly. And then I put out my password. And then I'm able to sign in. The page looks similar. So you look at this notice, you continue, you fill out the name of the student, etc. Similar things, whether they are an English language learner student, enrolled in a French immersion program, extended immersion program, you fill out the address. Then you do it's not letting me go. Oh, it's the same thing again. Here you have more options on the secondary website for gender, male, female, not disclosed or self-identified. You put the birth date. We're going to do the same thing, 2009. Country the student was born. Let's say, again, let's do Mexico as an example. Primarily language spoken at home. Again, we put Spanish. Ontario education number if they have one. Are they an ESL student? Let's say no. French, no. We put the address 208 Oakwood Avenue. And that's the one in York. And then again, I have to stop sharing the screen for the phone number. Okay, so this is the important difference. So some of the questions you'll notice are different on the application process, but this stage, it gives you the allocation of grade, whether 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, based on the child's age. Here, the child is 14 years old, so we're choosing grade 9. And here we can, okay, so applied and academic is not required for most of those things, so you can say locally developed. And here you can tick the box for both regular program, including immersion and extended French. You'll be able to choose further in this on the next page. I want the regular program. And here, so now there are many schools close by to where I'm located. The closest one that has availability is St. Mary Catholic Academy. Now, if I'm able to go back to what we were doing earlier, here, if you look on the map, the closest one to my location was Locator College School, but maybe they don't have space, so that school's not showing up. The next closest one is St. Mary Catholic Academy. So I have to choose that school to put my child in. So that's the closest, or you can choose some other one if you're willing to do the transit. Now you'll notice that some of the other schools are highlighted in a different color. So the ones in a darker yellow or sort of orange, they are single gender school, and the ones that are currently listed on this page, all of them are male schools. So if the student identifies as male, that's the school that they will be allowed to go to in addition to the others. If they identify with another gender option, they won't be able to go to those schools. The lighter yellow is a self-directed learning, so they learn by themselves. There's not much of instruction from teachers. So that's what they're saying. Now I'm going to select the one that's closest, St. Mary Catholic Academy. And then again, details of the school are here. Does the child have a sibling in the school? I'm going to say no. And then we will move forward. Let's just say the child is baptized. Here you'll notice whether or not I click on yes or no, I'm able to proceed, because at the secondary level, it doesn't matter the religion of the child. If they're Baptist, the school would just like to know for the record. You put the details of the parent. Again, you would have to fill out the information, phone number, address, etc. Is the parent the guardian of the child? Do they have legal custody? Should they get all the emails and records from the school? Do they live at the same residence? Those are some of the details there. Okay. Then again, details about the parent, and do they request to receive information from the school? Okay, we're going to skip this, move on to medical information. Same question, same thing about special education, arrival details in Canada, and current school if they are studying in Ontario. Then you have the privacy statement. Again, here it's missing all of this information. You click here, I've read the privacy statement. So you'll see it's missing some areas. Once you complete that, you can submit the application And on the top here, you'll see a printer emoticon. You can click on that to print the application. So it will generate a PDF of the filled application as you filled it out. Here, the application is incomplete of what I filled, so it'll be missing a lot of sections, but it'll show you this page and you're able to save that document as reference for yourself. Of course, I've not completed the application, so I cannot click on submit, but you'll have a option that comes on this page that says submit. Once the application is submitted, it'll go to the orientation center. And what I suggest is to send them a follow-up email as soon as it's submitted so they can allocate a test date for you. You'll notice on this page, on the secondary school enrollment process, you don't have to upload any documents, because once the orientation center gives you an appointment, they will ask you to bring a list of documents in person. You'd have to show them those documents at the assessment, and then likely the school will request the same documents when you go to the school to start classes. So you don't have to upload any documents for secondary level, but you have to bear in mind they're going to ask you for the list of documents that I'm going to show in the next slide. So I don't know if anyone has any questions on that so far. I just noticed there was a question in the chat clarifying a question that I went over before we came to the registration process. So I'll just quickly translate and answer that. Okay, I did not finish high school because of the depths of okay. So what I would suggest is maybe reach out to me directly and we can see what we can work on in terms of your particular case. But generally, to answer that to everyone in the webinar, if you've not completed credits, that's a conversation to have with the school. Or if you're looking to move towards post-secondary education, there might be options to get those required credits before you do so. Okay, so let's see what documents are needed. So for either a school level, you need the passport of both the parents and the children, birth certificate of the children, baptismal certificate of either the children or the parent. This is only mandatory at the elementary school level. At high school level, if you have it, it's a good addition for the TCDSB. If not, it doesn't really hold much difference. 2 different proof of address. This can be the rental agreement, a bank statement, or a letter. Recently of today, one of the schools I worked with don't accept bank letters from the bank, just bank statements. But if you're using a bank statement, always redact your financial information. They just need to confirm that you've been in Canada at that address for a significant amount of time to be able to apply. So generally, you get a statement after 1 month. And they don't need to know your financial information. So always redact that information before providing that document to the school, a phone bill, utility bill, etc. So that's for the proof of address. You need 2 different pieces of proof of address. Then if you're a refugee, your refugee status documents for parents and the children. If you're applying under the non-status or other status category, you need either the entry stamp on your passport, plane tickets, which can be digital, or the boarding pass, which they've given you physically when you travel on the plane. And this would be needed to prove your date of entry into Canada. And that would be either both the parents and the children, or if you're using a parent's date of entry that is prior to the child's, just that parent's date of entry. And also, if you're under a different category, the immigration documents, if you're a study or work permit holder, and here again, this would be the immigration documents of both the parent and the child, but the study or work permit of only the parent, because the child is unlikely to have that document. So that's the document that are needed. And so at the Catholic School Board, they would generally, some of the teachers and secretaries are generally knowledgeable in both languages and knowledgeable in the documents from some countries of newcomer families they work with. So they might not ask you to translate the documents. Generally, passport is in English, but birth certificate, baptismal certificates, they might not ask. Proof of address, because it's a Canadian address, has to be in English. Your status documents are generally also in English because it's provided by the Canadian government. But if you're going to secondary school level, you would have to have some credentials evaluated from your previous study. That unfortunately cannot be assessed if it's not in English. So if you need some documents translated, reach out to us. If the school persists, we can contact the school and see what the documents are, if they can be overlooked and just accepted as is. If it's some document like a school credit or credentials, we can refer you to other agencies that provide interpretation translation services on those regards. And it would be either for a minimal amount or free of cost based on what those other agencies determine. But you don't have to pay large sums of amount just to translate documents to go to school. So I don't know if there are any questions on this regard of stuff we've gone over so far. If not, you can reach out to us if you need any support securing an enrollment letter or support letter for your process, or if you need us to contact the school or board, just send me an email. I do recognize and appreciate that you have been waiting for me to get back to you in many of your cases. We unfortunately had a shift in our team structure, so it had just been me overseeing that. But in the upcoming weeks, where we have placement students who are supporting us, I believe one of our students is logged in to the webinar as well. We have volunteers. Okay, placement student had to leave. But we have a couple of placement students, we have volunteers who are willing to support, and also we are going to have a new youth worker joining our team, so we'll have more capacity to support on a broader regard. So moving forward, okay, costo tiene la inscripción. Okay, for our services at FCJ, we don't charge at all for any cost, especially since it's school enrollments in the team that I work on. There really is no cost for any of the services. In our other teams, like the protection team, the only thing that you would have to pay is for the immigration government fees that you're paying for the applications. We don't charge any amount for the services that we provide from FCJ Refugee Centre. But if the question is about translation of documents, I'm not too certain about what other agencies might or might not charge. We generally refer folks to Mennonite New Life Center or Costi, and I believe they don't charge a fee, but there might be a wait list of certain documents only that they're able to translate. Then finally, most of you already have access to my email and my phone number and extension at the office. But if not, you can take a picture of the screen. This will also be available on the website once the webinar is uploaded within the next 2 days. But if not, I'm just going to stop sharing the screen. If anyone else has any final questions or comments, you can share it either in the chat or by coming on the mic. If not, thank you so much for joining us in today's webinar. And I look forward to supporting you with any advocacy related things with the schools or with the board as required in your individual cases, or answering any follow-up questions you might have. We'll wait on for maybe another 5 minutes or a couple of minutes to 3 minutes if anyone has questions. If not, you're welcome to exit the session. You don't have to stay on. Thank you so much for attending. And thank you so much to Carolina for stepping in and doing the interpretation on the spot. Me putting you on the spot last minute without any prior preparation, and apologies again for going fast in some sections. But thank you so much, everyone, and you are free to exit the session if no questions. Thank you, everyone. And you all have a good night too.